Hello, everyone. Welcome to Doman Learning's May 2026 question and answer session. This is our monthly Q&A here at Doman Learning, where we take questions from parents around the world about parenting, early childhood education, the Doman method, and giving children exceptional abilities in the first years of life. So wherever you are in the world, welcome. Whether you're joining us right now on YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook, you can type your questions into the comments box and we will answer them in order. We will begin with pre-submitted questions from parents in the Doman Learning Facebook group. These are parents who have already enrolled in Doman Learning's online courses or purchased our materials. So we'll start with their pre-submitted questions first, and then if we've got a little bit of time left over at the end, we will take questions from the audience. A couple of quick announcements before we jump into things. First of all, you can see in the top left-hand corner a QR code with Noah's Calendly, right? So if you'd like to book a call with Noah, you can use your phone, click that QR code, and get access to the Calendly link and sign up for a time that works for you. Noah, anything else you want to say about that?
Truthfully, I think it's the best place to start because we develop a one-on-one connection. I answer any questions you have about the Doman method and how it would fit into your family routine. Most of the people who ask questions here, I first met through these discovery calls. It's the best part of my day. I love talking to parents and answering your questions. So please sign up. We slot 15 minutes, but I will say most of the time it goes much longer than that. So, just scan the QR code. You can visit the link in our bio if you're on Instagram, or just go to our website, www.domanlearning.com, to schedule a call with me today.
Amazing. Well, the second thing is that currently on our social media pages, we are releasing a series of videos with me answering the 5 most frequently asked questions from our parents about the Doman method. We have posted 3 of the first 5. So make sure to check out our social media and watch me answer those FAQ. And last but not least, if you want to get anything at Doman Learning, any course, purchase any of our materials, if you use the coupon code Spencer10 at checkout, you'll get 10% off any bundle course or digital reading materials at domanlearning.com. All right. Noah, should we get into the pre-submitted questions?
Yeah, let's get into it now. I'm going to start off with, it's not a question, but a mother wrote to us. Her name is Bree. She said, not a question, but I wanted to share. I started doing the reading before school program with my 14-month-old a month ago. So we'll be starting couplets on Monday. Yesterday, I printed a few of them out and walked into the living room holding them. I started talking to my husband, picked up my baby and sat him on my lap and set the couplets next to me. While my husband and I were talking, my baby started pointing and saying, "Bubbles, bubbles." I looked to see what he was pointing at, and the card that said Big Bubbles was at the top of the stack. I got as emotional that he read his first word as when he took his first steps. Thank you for what you do. And so,
wow, that's amazing.
Very nice story to start off with Q&A.
The kid is 14 months old?
That's correct, yeah.
That's special. Yeah, and by the way, very often young children, the first time they show parents their reading, it's by accident like that, where, the child will read the title of one of their Doman books, for example, and the parents will be surprised by it. So that's a wonderful story. Great job.
Okay. Getting into the questions, we're starting with Milena. My question is, do you recommend a different approach for gifted children? For example, getting bored or disengaged, would it be better to reduce the number of sessions per day, shorten the number of days for each card, rotate the cards faster, or do something else differently?
Well, first of all, this isn't quite an answer to Milena's question, but in our opinion, all kids are gifted. And it's really about us providing them with the information that they want and need and presenting it to them in the best possible way. And I think that Milena's gut feeling here is right on, which is for children who seem to be picking up the information taught in the Doman method faster than what is recommended, then recommended in terms of the frequency of the sessions, the number one recommendation is reduce the number of sessions. So instead of doing each category 3 times a day, do 2 times a day. Instead of doing it for 5 days, teach it for 3 days, and just customize it to your child. Each kid is different.
Great. And so Melinda has one other question. Another question I have is about helping gifted children stay engaged once they start school. How can she best support them?
Yeah. Well, first of all, in my experience, children who go to school with a head start, especially from our program, a lot of parents are concerned, oh, my child's going to be super bored when they go to school. But, children actually tend to enjoy things that they are good at and find easy, right? Children, like adults, we don't tend to like to do things that we feel we're failing at. And so when children go to school already reading and already doing math, certainly, yeah, they're ahead of most of the kids. But most of those children actually enjoy school because it doesn't have the same anxiousness attached to it that many other kids have who might be failing classes or having a hard time keeping up. So my first recommendation is that idea of like the gifted kid being super bored in the classroom, I think is exaggerated. I don't think it's as common as people think. They tend to be more the kid up in the front row who's kind of waving their hand, hoping to get called on. But the other thing that I will say is, yeah, it's really good to supplement and keep your child moving in areas, even if they're beyond what is happening in the classroom. So like to give everyone an example of this, it's very common for kids who grow up with the Doman method, maybe to enter first grade reading at a third grade level. And in the first grade, they might be learning ABCs and simple sight words along with their peers. But the most important thing is, when those kids are coming home, are you giving them books at a third or fourth grade level to keep them moving along, to keep them growing, and in a sense, challenging them a little bit to keep reaching to the next level? So the answer to Melinda's question is yes. Yeah, supplement at home and keep challenging your child.
Great. Okay, moving on to Valia. Hello, I read through the 6-month training program, but I still have some questions. I'm a bit confused. Sentence reading is introduced in the 3rd month, yet individual words still appear in the 4th month.
Sorry, Noah, can you say that again?
Yes, yeah, sure. Yeah. So Valia is a bit confused regarding sentence reading is introduced in the 3rd month, yet individual words still appear in the 4th month.
Absolutely. And individual words in the Doman learning materials appear throughout all 6 months of the materials. And the reason why is that, we begin couplets, which are word pairs, and then sentences, and then Doman books in the Doman reading program. But we want a child to have a large reading vocabulary. So we continue presenting single words, even when we've started teaching the child to read books. That's really important for growing their reading vocabulary and also increasing their reading fluency. Because, the average adult can read thousands of words. And we don't want to force a child to look at thousands of words before we start books. That would seem unfair, So what we do is we continue to show new words to grow the reading vocabulary and at the same time introduce sentences and books to give the child something more interesting and exciting to learn.
Okay, moving on to Ged. Ged's first question: how should I handle it when my child loses focus during flashcard sessions, either by grabbing the cards or tuning out entirely?
And we don't have an age for this child, right?
I don't believe so.
Well, my first question would be, if I was doing a coaching session with this family, my first question would be, how does your child react?
I'm sorry, 2 years old.
2 years old, okay.
Yeah.
My first question for this family would be, how does your child react to a brand new category of materials? Because that tells me a lot. If they say, oh, when I pull out a brand new set, I'm like, oh, here's a new set of, vehicles, and my child lights up and is excited, that tells me, okay, the child enjoys things when they're new and novel, but maybe not when they're old. right? And what that usually means is we need to decrease the frequency that we're showing the materials. Like we probably, with this child, we need to do what I mentioned before. Maybe we show categories 2 times instead of 3 times in a day, or we reduce the number of sessions. Now, if a family says, on the other hand, no, it doesn't matter, even if it's a brand new set, my child isn't as interested, then I'm going to look more at the dynamics of the program, right? Like, are we showing the materials quickly enough? Are we showing the materials back to front? I very often am finding that parents are like looking at the materials like this and showing the material and it's really important to be going back to front, right? And showing the picture first and saying cauliflower and then the word cauliflower, right? So I would look at dynamics with a child like that. Like, are you flashing the cards quickly enough? Are you going back to front? Have you added the pictures along with the words that are available at Doman Learning? No, as you know, very often families will tell us, my kid's not into it. And as soon as we add these picture cards, right? So instead of just showing, the word, if we start to add a picture card along with it, a lot of kids are much more engaged. So those are some of my thoughts. I would recommend for this mom maybe to consider, if she's comfortable with it, taking a video of a session and sending it to you, Noah, at hello@domanlearning.com, because sometimes we watch a video and we're like, oh, we can tell parents immediately what the issue is.
Yeah. No, 100%, please, we say this a lot. If you send us a video, it makes it much easier to know how the session is going, what is done during the session. So you can contact us, just look at the banner, send us a video if you feel comfortable doing that. This is Ged's second question. So, how do you successfully structure a flashcard session for a highly active 2-year-old? Is it better to use physical cards or digital at this age? And when is the best time of day to try? Would you ever bribe them to do sessions?
So answering the last question first about bribing them, the answer is no, because the program in and of itself should be a reward for the child. And so there are kind of 2 things there. First of all, no, we don't want to bribe the child to learn. Because we want them to know that learning is fun. And I should also say that when people are bribed, they always expect a bribe too. And that's the other problem that's created, whether it's learning or something else. So again, I feel like there's a dynamic here with these sessions, which is off. Now, Get did remark here that it's a very active 2-year-old. And the age of 18 months to 3 years can be a bit of a challenging time, because sometimes kids want sessions to be very short, because at that point they're at a very mobile moment in their life. They want to climb all over the place and roll on the ground and, do all kinds of things. They want to run around the house. And so I would, for a 2-year-old, just a couple of thoughts. I'd say, first of all, make sure that you're not doing too much in a sitting. Make sure you're not doing more than 5 cards in a sitting, because sometimes parents are trying to cram too much into a single session. And make sure also to do these sessions when there aren't a lot of distractions around. Sometimes when I've gone to families' homes to coach them with the program, they'll say, I don't know why my child's distracted during the reading sessions. And when I walk into the house, there are just toys scattered all over the house, right? There are little vehicles everywhere and toys and books, and it's so distracting. And I say to the parents, listen, why don't we simplify our lives a little bit? Let's put a bunch of these toys in the garage, get them out of the house. And then they go, oh, now my child's a lot more interested, right? Because there are just too many distractions. So that's another thing to consider.
Mm-hmm. And I guess just to follow up for Gad, right? What does a routine look like? And I don't know Gad's situation, but for a working parent or for a parent who stays at home, what would a routine teaching a 2-year-old how to read? What would that look like?
And when you say routine, you mean just the actual cognitive sessions or like mixed in with other activities in a day?
It's a good question. Let's start with one subject. Let's
Okay.
just say one subject.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's say that we're doing just a reading program. So I would, with this specific child, right? If Get said, "Hey, Spencer, I want you to come by and teach my kid for a day," I would just start with one set of pictures and words, right? So let's say I've decided I'm just going to start with these, this set of colors, right? So I would just start with this one set and do it 3 times in a day and see, okay, does this 2-year-old enjoy 3 super short teaching sessions? And if the answer to that is yes, then I would consider starting to build on that and saying, okay, let me go to 2 categories and do those 3 times in a day. Okay. In terms of working it into a routine in daily life, I would really say 2-year-olds need a lot of physical activity. And so, for example, I think you should consider doing some kind of physical activity with a child, like go out for a little walk, for example, maybe a 10-15 minute walk, come back in and show a set of cards. Yeah, and Noah probably remembers this. Our mom and other families that we knew when we were growing up in children, if our parents ever felt like we weren't focused, they'd have us get up and do something physical, like let's get up and do 25 jumping jacks, or let's go run to the end of the yard and come back. It's just a really good way to get kids, get a little bit of that energy out and help them settle down.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely do remember that.
Yeah, just getting back, start very small, simple, one set 3 times a day, and let's see how that goes.
Mm-hmm. And I guess the nice thing about that is if you're a working parent or if you're at home, you can do that. Just one set. Start small and slowly build up.
Exactly right.
Great. Okay, moving on to Dominica. We have been doing 3-element dot equations for 6 months. I question her after every 4 equations. I want to introduce new concepts like sequences and greater than, less than signs. How many days? So there are a few questions here. How many days or repetitions should we show these new concepts before introducing a quiz? How many times would you show an arithmetic sequence? So for those who don't know, like an arithmetic sequence being 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, right? If you're trying to teach a baby these sequences. And then would a session be showing 10 numbers in a sequence? I can also get you the age of this child too.
Just to start to answer, for a concept like greater than and less than, I like to teach it for about 2 weeks. And I like to give 5 examples a day. So yeah, that's what I would recommend to answer that. To answer the question about a sequence, yes, the maximum number of cards in a sequence should be 10. Because otherwise, like imagine if you're doing 2s, like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, to go up all the way up to 100, you'd have 50 cards. That's way too long a session. So 10 cards is going to be the maximum that you're going to do. Now, to answer the question about how long you have to teach something for to quiz, and also, in the question itself, I think did she say that she teaches 4 equations and then does a quiz?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So Noah and I were just talking about this because we see a lot of amazing videos of parents online doing our programs. But one concern that we have is there might be a little bit too much quizzing going on. And I would certainly never recommend doing what we call problem solving, asking a child questions. I wouldn't do it every day. Unless maybe in some rare circumstances, but by and large, for the vast majority of children, I wouldn't do it. Because first of all, children tend to get fed up with it. And they can start to get annoyed or even defensive and even start to blow off the program. So, so what I would usually do is I wouldn't do problem solving with a child on a concept until I've retired that. So in other words, if I'm going to evaluate a child with greater than and less than, right? And I just told you all to teach that concept for 2 weeks. I would teach it for the full 2 weeks before I would do any problem solving. Okay. Now, Noah, is this a good time for me to talk a little bit about like correct and incorrect answers? I think you had said, is this a good time? Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah. When you are doing problem solving with a child, it's very important to respond in the best possible way, right? So for example, if I'm holding up 2 things from the vehicles category, right, and I'm saying to a child, first of all, I'm never going to hold this up and say, what's this? Because that's putting a child on the spot and expecting them to answer with speech, which many children aren't comfortable with. So I'm going to hold up options like this, and I'm going to say, hey, where's the motorcycle? Okay. Now, if the child points at the motorcycle, I'll say something like, yeah, that's the motorcycle. Great job. And I'll move on. If they point at the bicycle, I would say that sometimes incorrect answers are even more useful than correct answers. I'm not sure if you've ever heard this before, but Bill Johns, who created discovery learning in math, he used to say that he cherished incorrect answers from kids more than anything else because he knew that they actually came from the child, that it wasn't something they were just kind of repeating back to him like a parrot, right? So if I say to a child, where's the motorcycle? And they point at the bicycle, I'm going to say, oh, that's a bicycle. This is the motorcycle, right? So I'm just turning that into a teaching session, right? I'm saying, that's the bicycle. Here's the motorcycle. You can notice I never said the word no or that's wrong. So there's absolutely no shame, right? Because the last thing we want to do is shame a child who's trying to collaborate with us. I always say to parents, problem solving, the reason why we call it problem solving and not quizzing or testing is that problem solving is a form of active learning, right? We learn when we interact with what we're doing. But testing, the problem with testing is that so often when it's done to try to expose ignorance in the person that's being tested, right? We're trying to find out, what does this child not understand? And the point of problem solving is not to expose ignorance. It's to help the child use the information that they've learned, okay? So that's why we always stay positive and we kind of teach the child correct or incorrect. We're all here for fun. We're all learning from the experience.
Yeah, super, super important. I just wanted to say real quick, Kimberly, I see your question. We're going to answer Dominica's second question and then come back to yours. So Dominica's second question, when transitioning from Doman dot cards to using red magnets on a whiteboard, does the arrangement of the magnets matter when showing a quantity like 20? Since young children subitize, do the magnets need to match the exact pattern on the cards?
So no, the magnets don't have to match the pattern on the cards at all. In fact, they shouldn't, because the whole point of teaching quantity recognition ability or subitizing, they're both the same thing, is we want the child to recognize the quantity, not the pattern, right? So we show this and we say, hey, that's 7. We're not putting that in a specific pattern. So no, the answer is they don't need to match. They shouldn't match. And, I probably don't say this enough. When you're teaching quantities, even if you're using the quantity cards, if you have a child under 2.5, you can pick up that card in different ways, right? And in fact, you should, because it allows the child to see the quantity in different ways.
Great. Okay, so I'm moving on to Kimberly. Kimberly is a new parent, just enrolled in reading before school, and she's here live, and she has a question, which is, we just started the Doman reading program with our 13-month-old 5 days ago. He was fine the first 3 days, and then all of a sudden has become not interested. Advice?
Yeah. So Kimberly, I'll answer your question, but my first 2 questions back to you would be, how many categories of words did you start with? I'll start with that. My first recommendation, Kimberly, would be to stop the materials that he's now become disinterested in and add a whole new set. Just add one new set to start with of 5 new pictures and words, and let's see how he reacts. I'm not sure if you heard my earlier answer to another mom, but I said that my first thing that I want to know is, will this child react differently to a brand new set? Because if your son sees a brand new set and is like, yes, that just means, okay, we need to reduce the number of days we're showing him the materials. If he doesn't like the new cards, then we've got to figure out from the dynamics of the program what's going on.
Kimberly has followed up. You see that?
Yeah, we started with 3 and have gone up to 5. I'm thinking we should add pictures. Yeah. That's so. Kimberly, this is what we should do. With the new set that you're going to start, use the pictures, do it 3 times a day for 5 days. Okay. But just that one set, and let's see if he's interested for 5 days. The vast majority of the time when you add the pictures, the child is interested. But one important thing, don't take one of the categories you just showed your child as words and add pictures, because he might have the mindset of like, oh, I've seen these already, even if you add pictures to them. So make sure it's a brand new set with pictures and words, and let's see how he reacts.
Great. Okay. I'm moving on back to the. Oh, you're no problem. Thank you for the question, Kimberly. Okay, moving on to Gabriella. Okay, how can I teach a child with intellectual disabilities basic math concepts? We tried with the flashcards, but my son, 4-year-old with Down syndrome, doesn't get them. We have done all the math program with the typical dot flashcards, but he didn't seem to get quantities, math concepts, etc. I stopped doing math with him, maybe my error, and we focused on reading and encyclopedic knowledge. He loves flashcards, by the way, but it's like he didn't get the math concepts.
Mm. So, Noah, you said that Gabriella had signed up for the Math Before School course. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, Gabby, what you're going to want to do is watch the B module videos in the Math Before School course, because the B module videos are all for children above 2.5 years of age. And in the B module videos, we go into how to teach a child innate number sense, which is the ability to recognize small quantities. And then we talk about how do we go into numeral recognition, which is the recognition of how we write numbers. And then we get into teaching addition. And then we even get into all 4 operations and how to get into higher math with kids. But yeah, you watch the B modules, because I think you'll really, really connect with that. And Noah, do you think we have time for me to show a little? Well, I guess I'll pull it up anyway.
Go for it.
Yeah. So basically, just to give you an idea, Noah, can you see the 3 chips, the poker chips?
I see randomly right now.
Okay. Too bad. Sometimes.
Now I see the 3 chips.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the slideshow aspect of this software doesn't work well. But basically, Gabby, what we will do is, imagine you're working on a tabletop with your 4-year-old. You're going to put down small quantities between 1 and 5 on that tabletop. So for example, you could put down 1 and say, that's 1, right? And we just use poker chips for this activity because they're easy to handle, they're lightweight, and we always use the same color, right? So now we're saying that's 2, that's 3. So you're placing them down on the table. You're not counting them, because we're not teaching counting at this point. We're teaching innate number sense. That's 4, that's 5, right? So that's teaching quantity recognition skills. I just did it in order, but children often enjoy it more when you do it randomly. So for example, you put down 3 and you say, that's 3. And then you put down 2 and you say, that's 2. And here's 5, right? So we start with poker chips, and then we get into how to teach numerals and how to teach addition. So yeah, definitely watch the B modules for anyone over 2.5 years of age. For anyone under 2.5 years of age, the A modules in the Math Before School course are where you're going to want to go.
I just want to, for a quick second, move to a question from Aisha and Daniel. I have a 7-month-old and I don't know how and where to start with all of this. My recommendation is to start by reaching out to me. I do a discovery call with parents. We can talk it through. Every family is different, but I'm more than happy to help you with where and what is the best thing to start with your child. Okay. You can do that. Let me bring it up real quick. We have a QR code that you can scan, or just go to our website, www.domanlearning.com, and you can sign up for a discovery call with me. Okay.
Yeah, and I think one of the real great reasons to jump on a call with Noah is we have a lot of different places to start, right? We have an early reading program, we have an early math program, we have encyclopedic knowledge. But where parents start depend very much on the age of the child, what parents want or are most excited to start with, and also parents' time. Are we talking a stay-at-home parent or are we talking about a full-time working parent? Right? Our advice may differ a bit for those different groups because we want to make sure whatever you get started with, you're successful with it. Mm-hmm. So I think a call with Noah can help you with kind of deciding what those objectives are, and he can tell you the best place to start.
100%. Okay, moving on to Vimala. So Vimala is a grandmother. She has a little story that I wanted to share with you, Spencer. 28 years ago, I attended a Glenn Doman seminar in Singapore and used the reading and math packages with my 18-month-old daughter. By age 2, she was reading 3 to 4 sentences. We moved to the US and my daughter grew up to be one of the smartest kids in school. She was the valedictorian of her middle school, graduated 4th in her high school class, and was accepted to all the college she applied to. She's now 30 years old, and I give all the credit to the Glenn Doman system. So very nice. Thank you for sharing. And it's now amazing that you get to do this with your grandchild. You know, we're third generation, so it's always great hearing third generation stories. So the question that Vimala has is now, the same daughter has an 18-month-old son. While he loves sitting to read toddler books and can focus on doing 12 wooden puzzles at a time, he looks away and refuses to look at the Doman flashcards. What advice do you have to help an 18-month-old who is highly focused on books and puzzles but resists looking at the flashcards?
Well, my first bet here is that grandma is using words and not pictures, because she says he likes books, which commercial books, which have a lot of pictures, and he likes puzzles, which obviously tend to have color and have pictures. So my guess is the pictures are going to handle this issue. Noah, can you tell people about how to find the Doman learning materials that have pictures and words?
Yeah, because I also see this a lot of times where parents bought it 3 years ago and didn't realize that we've updated the program since then. Right. So we how long ago was it? 2 years ago, I believe. We updated all the materials for our parents for free as a gift because we realized how much better the program was. And essentially, our Reading Before School course comes with 900 single words. We made individualized pictures for all of those 900 single words. And if you go to the course, Reading Before School, you will find them under the lesson. I think it's called New Picture Integrated Program. There you'll find the first month of materials, plus little videos by Spencer, showing activities to play with them, how to show the cards, stuff like that. So if you haven't watched that lesson yet, you should really go and watch the lesson and then get the materials there too.
Amazing.
And so just to say, Vimala, if you are using pictures and you're still having issues, once again, like we've said before, if you're comfortable, you want to send me a video, I'm more than happy to review it with Spencer and get back to you privately. Okay. Moving on to Toria. I am currently approaching the 4th month of the reading program with my daughter. A week ago, I also introduced the math program. I have a few observations and questions. So some context, language context. They live in a bilingual household, French and English, with French being the primary language. The reading program. I started the Arabic reading program when my daughter was 4.5 months old. She interacts very well with the materials. Initially, I conducted 3 sessions a day, but have since reduced it to 1 session, which seems good for her. However, I've recently noticed that she's losing interest in sentences and tends to look away. While she still loves individual words accompanied by pictures, she does not engage with sentences. How should I address this?
Yeah, usually in this place, with this kind of question, I will say, okay, let's move on from sentences and start the Doman books. Because the Doman books have, essentially a Doman book is one page has a sentence and the second page has a picture. We separate the text and the picture so the child isn't distracted by the picture, from the text. So I will usually say to parents, all right, let's start with the Doman books. So let's do single words and Doman books. And I would say in 80% of cases, parents will say, oh, my child's thrilled now. I think it's just because probably this child loves the pictures and the words so much that, the child has developed a little bit of like an attitude toward the sentences of like, the pictures and the words are like dessert. And, kids are gluttonous, just like they'll keep eating ice cream until they're sick. It's kind of the same way with the cognitive program. If they find one thing that they love, they'll latch on to it. And so my advice is move to Doman books. Yeah. They're in the month 4 materials, by the way.
Yeah. This is moving on to a similar thing. So I'm currently teaching her math and French. Additionally, she spends time daily with her grandparents who speak Gujarati. Okay. I would love for her to learn to read in their language as well. Mom does not speak the language, and her grandparents are unable to follow the formal program structure. I've created Doman-style books for them to read with her during her visits. Is this approach effective?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's wonderful that you want to do multiple languages at the same time. I was just in India, and all the Sanskrit-based languages. I'm so impressed that people can read them because I can't. It's actually very hard seeing the alphabets, knowing for an outsider who's never learned these languages, to know where a word starts and where it ends. But absolutely, yeah. Our reading program has been used probably at this point with every major language around the world, definitely in every Indian language that exists. And yeah, it's a great idea.
This is the last question from Taria. I would like to start the Doman card program, encyclopedic knowledge. I am hesitant about which language to use for this specific part of the program. What would you recommend? So it's a bilingual household, French and English, French being the primary language spoken at home.
Yeah, I mean, usually you would start with the primary language spoken at home. And that's for a few reasons. I mean, first of all, it is nice for parents to start with a language that they're confident with. And no, we're talking about the encyclopedic knowledge program, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So usually you would start with the language that the child already has the largest speaking vocabulary. You can always repeat the encyclopedic knowledge cards later on in another language, right? So for example, if you've already taught the African elephant in English, there's, nothing, stopping you from teaching, elefante africano in Italian later on. But usually we start in the first language.
Okay, moving on to Beatrice. For a multilingual household living in France, we are currently in month 2 of the Spanish reading program using single words and books. I think that's from a previous recommendation from last Q&A. When introducing a second or third language, Do we need to finish the full 6 months of the program first, or can we run them in parallel after a 1 month delay? So I think she was confused hearing from last time, because we recommend, right, starting a program and then after a month starting the next language. She was wondering, do you have to do the full 6 months, then after a month start, or?
No. And I think there's been maybe a wider misunderstanding here. I just recommend starting with one language to make sure that's going well before you start the second. I never really exactly specify how much time that is, because it really depends on the confidence level of the parents. Now, if a parent wanted me to be specific, I would say, listen, if you're starting your first language today, wait at least 1 month before starting a foreign language. Make sure it's going well, and maybe that's what I said, something along those lines, wait at least a month. But no, you don't have to wait. You don't have to complete the full 6 months in the first language and then wait longer. Now, you could start English, and if it's going well a month or two from now, go ahead and add the second language.
Yeah.
I said English, but I meant start the first language, and then, a month or two later, start the second.
And I say the same, because a lot of the time the parents who call me, they're so excited, right? And there's I call myself the head of parent success because I want the parent to succeed. And it's great that you're excited, right? But why I say delay the start, right, is because if you do it all at once, there's a higher possibility it leads to burnout, right? And we would rather have something you can do bite size and slowly build on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is that the most important thing to do in the first years of life are actually not to teach your child to read in every language that you know. It's to teach your child to understand every language you know by speaking the language to the child. Because once someone has learned how to read in their first language, learning to read in a second language is much, much easier. For example, I was traveling for the first time about 10 years ago to Russia for work, and I decided I'm going to teach myself how to read Russian. And I taught myself how to read Russian fairly quickly. The problem is I still don't understand the language. People speak it. I can read street signs. That's really helpful, but I don't understand it. And so once you know how to read, learning to read in other languages is actually much easier than learning how to understand and speak the languages. So with a young child, speak with them, read to them in all the different languages. That's the most important thing. But picking up reading cards is actually the least important thing to do to teach a foreign language. It's a great thing to do, but it's not nearly as important as speaking to them in that language.
Okay, this is Beatrice's second question. My son likes to sit on my lap now to see the cards versus me showing them in front of him. Is it okay if the flashcards are shown starting from the front versus starting from the back to the front, if it is faster to pass them on this way?
Absolutely. It's fine. Look, your son loves you. He just wants to sit on your lap and experience the materials with you. No greater compliment to you as a mom. So yeah, of course, if he wants to sit on his mom's lap while he looks at the cards, do it.
Okay, moving on to Carol. How can parents keep the Doman reading method joyful and pressure-free while still being consistent?
It's a good question, because there's a little bit of an implication there that anything done consistently, it's going to be harder to do it joyously. I think that, and maybe to a certain degree, Carol is onto something here, probably because even from a parent standpoint, you're the teacher, you're not going to wake up in the same mood every day. Some days you're going to have more energy. Some days there are going to be more diapers to change or stressors, or you're under the weather. And so I would say probably my first recommendation is, consistency is important for long-term success. But sometimes in life, you do have to take short breaks from things for long-term success, right? I mean, we've all had that experience where you've woken up one day and you said, you know what, I'm going to take today off because I'm just not in a place right now to put my best foot forward. I need a what I think many people call like a mental health day. Um, and sometimes that's just going to happen in life, and that's fine. That's fine, because in what you're doing is, okay, you're paying a little short-term price. We're not going to pick up the cards today for a long-term gain, which is I'll be in a better place tomorrow to pick these up and be in the right mood and state of mind for my child. So it's perfectly fine sometimes to take short-term breaks. And sometimes it's needed. And I have to say, having worked with parents for 20 years, and especially moms, although some dads fall into this category too, they're not always great about knowing when to take a break. There's a little bit of a mindset of so many people depend on me, I need to be perfection for everyone. And that's not always healthy. And I find a lot of parents and especially moms burning themselves out that way. So my advice for all of you is sometimes just take a break. It's okay. I think when you take a break, you should just say, you know what, I need a day or two, and let me make sure that when I pick these cards back up, I pick them up with the same energy that I did the first day that I picked them up. And, if you do that, your child will sense that from you, and they'll be more engaged as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a very, very insightful question. I think about it, right? Like if we do think of things that are consistent and always joyful, I think of that, reading to your kid before bed, right? It's something that parents are usually, if they do it, are consistent about it. And it's pressure free, right? It's a gift. And so bringing that same energy to sessions, being present while doing that.
Yeah. And Noah, was that our last pre-submitted question?
We have a couple more.
Couple more. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Maybe we should move on then, just to make sure we get to all of them.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. So moving on to Allison. Allison's first question: when do kids tend to start voluntarily reading words?
Completely depends. Depends. I mean, we started off the session with a 14-month-old who, started relatively recently, I think, and read the word bubbles out loud. So some kids do it within the first couple of weeks. Some take months and months. So yeah, it really depends on the child. And that's why we start with the problem solving that I showed earlier, where you give choices, usually a couple of months into starting the program, we'll start with that problem solving just to give the child that kind of active learning opportunity, because only certain kids based on their personality will voluntarily read things aloud. Other kids are more self-conscious and they don't like to do that.
This goes into the second question that Allison asked, but at what point in the program is it okay to test to see if they learn the reading words?
So I recently wrote something on this, which is going to get published fairly soon. But in that, I recommended showing about 300 words before starting. I would definitely say minimum 200 before you get started. And the reason why is, first of all, it gives the child ample time to just start the process of reading before being asked questions. If you think about it, on the first day of showing your child materials, it's not fair to start asking questions right away, right? So it's, well, what's the exact perfect moment? No one knows for sure. But I said, okay, show your child a few hundred words before you start asking them questions. It gives them a lot of opportunity to see a lot of words, start to learn them. As children do more and more reading, they tend to learn to read words faster as well. So it becomes easier for them. So yeah, that's my answer.
Number 3 from Allison: how many bits of knowledge should I teach before I teach the information on the back? Is there anything updated I should know about teaching bits of knowledge? So I think Allison isn't enrolled in the Gift of Knowledge course, but it sounds like maybe she's read the book or seen information elsewhere about it.
Well, in the Gift of Knowledge course, there are, I believe, 450 cards. Is that right, Noah? I think there are 450 cards, and each one has 3 facts on the back.
Yeah, 180 cards, I believe.
180 cards. Okay.
No, sorry. Sorry. I'm using a calculator. 360 cards.
360 cards. Okay. Somewhere in between both of our guesses. So there are about 360 cards. So we actually teach the parents in the Gift of Knowledge course to teach all 360 of those cards first, and then to go back and teach all the facts. Okay. Now we do that partially just to make it easier for parents to say, okay, I'm going to go through the process of teaching my child these 360 pieces of information on cards. Then I'm going to go back and teach the facts on the back. But that generally is what I'll do. Show around that many cards before starting facts.
Yeah, Allison, I'm going to reach out to you via email with more information to help you with this. So please check that out. I'm going to move on to Kos. Kos, he has an interesting question. What about reading the same book to the child in 2 different foreign languages at the same time? For example, I have a commercial book in English. Each page has 5 sentences. I manually translate each page to Japanese. So this is the reading process. Page 1, I read in English. Page 2, I read in Japanese. Page 3, I read in English. Page 4, I read in Japanese. Next time, I start from Japanese and so on. So after 2 reading sessions, all pages will be introduced to the child in both languages. The idea of this approach is to motivate the child to develop the skill of switching between 2 languages instantly.
It's very creative. For me, just for simplicity reasons, I would usually say to a parent, just read the book in English and then later read it in Japanese. But what I will always say is actually the thing that matters the most is, are you and your child having fun? And if Kos says that he and his daughter are having fun, that's actually what really matters the most. And the idea of switching between languages, I think, is a great tool for children to have. Children are incredible interpreters. So I'm fine with it if you and your child enjoy it.
And just for everyone's reference, Kos is a veteran. He's been asking questions for years, and he always has really interesting things to say. So we haven't heard from you in a minute, so it's nice to get a question from you, Kos. Okay, moving on to the last question of the Q&A from pre-submitted questions. This is from Aneta. Could you comment more on how the reading program improves the speech development? Any advice how to improve speech developing using the reading program, since we are not asking babies or kids to repeat the words?
So she's absolutely right. We don't ask children to repeat the words, but many children do it on their own, right? And especially if you look at 2 to 3-year-olds, very often they will want and even insist on repeating the words after each one is shown. That's great for speech development. That alone is amazing for speech development, because at that age, children actually want to take an active role in developing their own speech. It's one of the reasons why they repeat the words. Now, if we look at younger children, the reason why the reading program is so good for speech development is that we are teaching words visually, not auditorily, right? So for example, if I say imagine I'm talking to a 1-year-old, a 12-month-old, and I say, honey, look, the sky is blue. Maybe the child can hear my language, but they don't necessarily know exactly what I mean, right? Or they're trying to decode every word, right? But if I say to that child, this is blue, right? And then I show them the word blue, right? Now we're showing they're not just hearing the word blue auditorily, they're seeing it visually. They're seeing both the reality in the image and the written word. So the child most children before the age of 6 only hear language through the auditory pathway. They don't see it very often through the visual pathway, which is what reading is. So we are teaching language both through the auditory and the visual pathway with the reading program. We're using 2 pathways instead of 1. And by the way, the visual pathway, which is what we use for reading, is the most important sensory pathway that humans have, right? In our sensory cortex, the visual cortex by far has the most neurons in it. So it's a great way to teach language through the visual pathway. And very often children who grow up on our reading program have incredibly developed speech. Yeah. It also introduces a lot of words into their vocabulary, into their daily life that they may not otherwise ever hear, right? Like here I have a set of different vegetables, right? And so, if you teach a child, okay, this is cabbage and this is cabbage, many children may never hear the word cabbage in their first years of life, or it might only be heard in passing. But when it's shown as part of the reading program, they're hearing vocabulary that they wouldn't otherwise hear with repetition.
Okay, so we are now moving. We have 5 minutes left. We're now moving to the public part of the Q&A where anyone. So before we answered all of our pre-submitted questions from parents who are enrolled in our courses and bundles, now we're opening it up to the public. If you have any questions, you can submit them and Spencer and I will answer them.
So Noah, we've got a bunch of questions on questions and comments from on Instagram. We got a question from Milena who says, "Hi Spencer, sorry for not being here since 2 p.m. Have you already answered questions sent by email?" The answer is yes, right, Noah? We answered.
Yeah, we did. And I'll send it to you with the timestamp.
Okay. I love some of these comments. Andre Nutricion said, "Oof, amazing." That's great. Lil Docha says, "Amazing." Hi, Lil Docha. Lil Docha also said, "Very useful information. Thank you for sharing." Keto Carb Smart says, "It's good to see you two together." Thank you so much. Jane says, "Wonderful insight and expert tip, Noah."
Oh, I wonder what that was for. Thank you.
Jane says, "Spencer's 100% right. The experience of joyful learning with the parent is incredible." Thank you, Jane. Let's see here.
I do have a question from YouTube.
Yeah, go ahead.
So let me put it up. I started with my 5-month-old about last week, but I am not really sure if I am doing it right because he is not yet speaking at this age. My question is, how do I know that I am on the right track?
Well, earlier in this session, I talked about doing problem solving and about asking questions with choices. So that's usually the best way to get started. Now, it doesn't say here exactly. I'm not sure if you've started the reading program or the gift of knowledge program or the math program, but problem solving, I won't go into much detail now because I talked about it earlier and I don't want to bore the parents who have been here the whole time. But it's all about giving your child choices, right? And saying, hey, where's, the carrot, for example. And with a 5-month-old, I do have to say, it can be a little challenging because 5-month-olds often don't realize that we adults point with our hands. And so very often, what will happen, I see this with a lot of parents, they'll say, "Where's the carrot?" And the 5-month-old looks at the carrot, like stares at it. And the parent's like, "Where's the carrot? Where's the carrot? Grab the carrot." And from the 5-month-old standpoint, it's like, I'm looking right at it. What else do you want from me? So with a young child, if I'm holding up options and I say, "Where's the carrot?" If they look at the carrot, I'm just going to say, "Yes, that's the carrot," right? Or if they're staring at the broccoli, by the way, with young children as well, you have to understand, if you've never been, many 5-month-olds have never been asked a question before in their lives. So you shouldn't be surprised if in the first times you're doing problem solving, if they kind of like look at you like, "What do you want from me?" Right? So some children will even look at a picture. They don't look at the picture you want them to look at. They'll look at the one they're more interested in. So you'll say, "Where's the carrot?" But they're staring at the broccoli because they love the broccoli. right? So in that case, you go, oh, you love the broccoli. I see that. Oh, yeah, it's so interesting, right? And this is the carrot. So you just reinforce what the two cards are. But yeah, you just have to be patient with a 5-month-old and watch where they're looking. That's the most important thing. And I always say to parents, the most important thing about a problem solving session is not what your child answers, it's how you react to them answering. That's the most important thing, right? So if they're looking at that carrot, the worst thing, the biggest mistake parents make is they say, hey, where's the broccoli? And let's say the child's looking at the carrot and the parent gets uncomfortable, like, oh, they're looking at the wrong one. And they just put down the materials and they end the session because they feel so uncomfortable, because we've been taught at a young age answering incorrectly is a terrible, terrible thing. It's not a terrible thing. It's okay to be wrong in life. That's how we learn, right? So if your child's looking at the wrong one, you just with a nice voice go, oh yeah, I see you're looking at the carrot. This is broccoli. And that's it.
Yeah, Maki said that they're doing the reading program, and also thanks a lot. This is very helpful.
Fantastic. And Maki, I definitely recommend you go back and watch the earlier part of the session.
This is from Allison. My kids like to see the words first and then the pictures. Is that okay? I've never heard of that before, but well, what do you think, Spencer?
That's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. I could fill a book with the funny things that kids. Let me tell a quick funny story. So, with our dot cards, which is all part of our math program, I was once contacted with a family because it was time they had taught the cards from like 1 to 9. Okay. And it was time to retire that one dot card. And they took it out of the set, and the child had an existential crisis. They were like, where's 1? And the parents were like, we're done with 1. Like, you don't have to see it anymore. And it was as if the child had lost their best friend. So the parent said to me, Spencer, what should we do? Like, my child is freaking out that 1 is no longer. And I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take the number 1, the card, and we're going to sit it next to your child. And your child is going to get to learn with number 1. And so for the next 6 months or so, every math session, the child would have the number 1 next to them, because they were like, okay, as long as my friend 1 is here to look at the cards with me, everything's okay. So kids are their own humans. It's one of the best things about doing this program. And if your kids are like word first, then pictures, that's fine. Now, the thing that I love about this question is Allison doesn't say my child. She says my kids. It means multiple kids want the word first, then the picture. If I had to take a guess, the oldest one said they like it this way, and the other ones are going along with it. But anyway, I don't want them to go strike on you, Allison. So just go along with it.
Allison also said, I bought the Doman baby course and I'm doing it with my 4-month-old baby. Thanks for making this course. I'm having so much fun with my baby. She just loves it. That's awesome.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's why we made the course. I'm so glad.
Okay. Do you see any more questions, Spencer?
Melina says here, you're very creative on how to help kids, Spencer. Thank you, Melina. I appreciate it. I have a question here. If my native language isn't English, how can I teach my kids English? Okay, so actually, no, I think this will be our last question. So actually, if you go to domanlearning.com and you check out the Reading Before School course, that these reading materials come with pictures and words, right? So for example, if you're teaching these different vegetables and you're saying peas and showing the child the picture first, and then you're teaching them the written word, it's a great way to teach a child a language as a foreign language. And in fact, the funny thing is, with the Doman method, we've added the pictures only recently, but we've been teaching foreign languages with pictures for years. And, at a certain point, I said, we do pictures with foreign languages and kids love it. Why don't we just do them with the first language too? And children became so much more interested. So yeah, the answer is just show the reading materials with pictures. It'll help them. And of course, if you speak English, just speak English. read books in English to your child. Fill the environment with English and your child will learn it. But definitely check out the Reading Before School course, where you can find the pictures and reading materials in English.
Okay, that is the last question that we're taking. You can always reach out to us. We do this Q&A for our parents who are enrolled to get Spencer answering questions, but I also can answer a lot of questions, and you can reach out to me. Just contact us. You can email hello@domanlearning.com. I will personally answer you, or if you DM us on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. I also want to say that I do discovery calls with parents. You can sign up. There's a QR code in the top left corner, I believe, and you can sign up for a discovery call. We'll talk, see what's the best way to start the Doman Method program with your kid. You can also go to our website, www.domanlearning.com. Spencer, is there anything you'd like to say before we end off?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, just looking forward to next month's Q&A.
Yeah, we used to do 30-minute Q&As. Now they're over an hour because of all the questions we get. It's truly a gift. We love our community. Thank you so much for all your great questions.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your May. Bye-bye.